for the first time in my life, it was like something smacked me across the head and said, girl, you need to chill out and you need to take life a lot slower.
Welcome to the Strokecast. A Generation X stroke survivor explores rehab, recovery, the frontiers of neuroscience, and how to peel a banana with one hand.
Hello, I'm Bill Monroe, and welcome to episode 128 of the Strokecast. This episode is sponsored by the fine folks at Motus Nova. To see if they can help you recover the use of a hand or a foot after stroke, go ahead and visit strokecast.com/Motus Nova. This week, I talk with Carmen De La Paz. Now, Carmen is a singer, she's a musician, a dancer, an artist, a carpenter, an Emmy-nominated HGTV and Oprah Winfrey Network TV personality, among a whole bunch of other things. Really, she's got just a truly amazing background. I could go on about her bio, but I'll just keep it short-ish here and just say that Carmen is amazingly talented. She's awesome on TV and an absolute delight to chat with on a podcast interview. More recently, of course, she became a stroke survivor, and I am truly honored that she chose to share her story with us. So now, let's meet Carmen. Carmen, thanks so much for joining us on the show this week. I couldn't wait to make this happen.
No, it's amazing. Thank you so much for reaching out to me. Who even knew that there was a podcast dedicated to just strokes? And I love your title. So congratulations to you. I'm happy for your recovery as well. And it's a pleasure to be here with you. Really, thank you.
Oh, well, thank you. It's one of those things where I created the show because I wanted there to be a show that exists that I wish existed when I had my stroke. So that's where sort of all this comes from. And we've got just a fantastic community of survivors out there.
Yeah, it's incredible. You don't, like all things, until you have a red car, you don't notice the other red cars, right? You know, it's the same thing with a stroke. Until you have one, you don't really even know that there's a world out there of survivors, of incredible stories, of all the different challenges that we faced along the way. And so I just think it's wonderful that you have this outlet, and that is why it was my pleasure to be here and to support the process and anybody else who might be going through this as much as possible.
And you know, I think that's one of the things that's really interesting. You mentioned the whole red car thing. You don't see it. I think a lot of times what I've encountered is that people with significant deficits following their stroke often are not able to be out in their public life. And a lot of people who don't have significant visible deficits blend in and don't talk about it that much in real life. So you just don't see as much of it out there until you really become attuned to it.
Well, unfortunately, you know, in our society, it's all about looking good and, you know, fake it until you make it kind of concept, you know what I mean, with the whole pressure of social media and just outwardly physical appearances and deficits, which in other areas could be considered disabilities, are something that people struggle to hide or people don't want to share about, you know. And for me, there's no shame in my game. You know, it's not something that anybody signs up for, that anybody even really anticipates. It's, oh my goodness, such a surprise in life, you know. And I think that within our struggles and our vulnerabilities, if we're able to show them, it just makes it a little bit easier for other people. And as you mentioned, you know, some people might not have all of the ability to access certain things. So, you know, my hope is that somebody who may listen to this because they follow me in other realms of my public, you know, world exposure might say, oh my God, I know somebody who had a stroke and this might be really good for them to hear it. Oh my God, you know, I think my friend needs to get a hold of this. And so I think that's just a beautiful thing. And that's one of the reasons also why I wanted to speak with you and to be here with you today, because I think it's a wonderful opportunity to kind of broaden that umbrella a little bit more and just shine a light a little bit in places where people might not be looking.
And of course, one of the things you mentioned there is, of course, being in a society with a whole pressure to look good, the whole social media environment, to be at the top of our game, to present that level where appearances matter. And the one of the myriad of industries you have been a part of has just really, really emphasizes that with your experience in the media and being on camera, and all of that certainly adds that extra element to that. But let's start with sort of what was life like before your stroke in the months sort of leading up to that. What were you doing? What was happening in life?
I was actually in Wisconsin. That's where I grew up, and I had recently ended a relationship, and that's why I'd kind of come home to just kind of like breathe and what's next and where do I want to go and what am I going to do? I've always never stopped creating. I had, a bunch of private clients and whatnot. I had walked off of my last TV show about a year before, which was on the Oprah Winfrey Network, and we had garnered 2 Emmy nominations for the both seasons that I was on that show. And so I kind of got to a point where, it's Bill, TV show number 53, network number 8 for me, and it's an intense career between. Actually, I do build everything that you see me make on television. I do design it. I do, there's such a combination of physical and mental work and emotional work and personality and egos and all this. And so I had kind of taken a break, and I came home because my brother was like, "Oh, please come home. We need your help. There's some stuff that we need to do around the house." And my brother's he's an amazing mechanical engineer, and he's also
because no one is a hero in their hometown.
Yes, exactly. Well, you know what? I got to tell you, my hometown has been so amazing to me in Waukesha, Wisconsin. I got to say Waukesha, Wisconsin, awesome. That, people are really proud of my accomplishments, and I'm so appreciative of that. And I feel nothing but love at a grocery store where, so I'll be there and somebody will be like, "Hey, Carmen, what are you doing?" And, so I gotta say that, yes, that doesn't necessarily apply in Wisconsin, but I will tell you it implies in Puerto Rico, and that's a whole nother story for me. So let me get back to your question, sure. Darling. So I had come home and I was in Wisconsin taking care of some things for my mom. And my brother was like, our mom's going into 80. There's stuff that we need to do around the house. And I was renovating the basement. I was literally mixing cement and repatching walls. I was cutting wood and framing up the walls. So I was like full hog. You know what I mean? Like I was like physically going. And the one thing that had noticed that now correlates specifically into my stroke is that for 10 years, I had been suffering from really bad migraines. Like really bad migraines. And it started on my first show on HGTV, Hammerheads. And I thought that I was just completely dehydrated, that I was working too hard in the sun, that I was lifting too much, that I was just dehydrated. So the only rider in my contracts after that was, I need somebody to make sure I'm drinking water. I need somebody to make sure I'm drinking water. And I would tell every production that I would go into, I kind of get these migraines, and I think it's just because I get really dehydrated and I forget to drink water. So make sure there's a production assistant handing me water. Well, come to find out, after I had the stroke, my doctor's like, "You've had 2 aneurysms in your head for probably 10 years, which were the direct deposit of the migraines." That was literally what I was doing the day before I had the stroke. The next day, I was going to go right back down to the basement and keep working. I was in the shower, and all of a sudden, out of nowhere, I saw blue lights, like firework blue lights. And I think I fainted because I found myself laying in the shower with the water running on me. And it was everything that I could do to get out of the shower by myself. I got out of the shower and I literally threw myself in the bed, and my mother comes in and she goes, "What's wrong?" I said, "Oh, I just have another one of those migraines. Just get me a couple of Advil and some water, and I'll chug some water and it's going to go away." Well, I laid in that bed for 7 hours, and my mom came home at later, like 3 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon. She's like, "Are you still with that headache?" And I'm like, "Yeah." By now I had thrown up. I had, I was just a mess. And she goes, I'm taking you to the hospital. I was like, I can't go. I can't get dressed. And she goes, I'm going to dress you. We are going to the hospital. You pay attention. When a Puerto Rican mother tells you to do something, you say, okay. And so she got me dressed. Between her and my brother, they got me in the car. And the last thing I remember was one of the ER people had come to the car and opens up the door and he goes, what's wrong, sweetie? And I said, I just don't feel good. And that's the last thing I remember. I briefly woke up in a helicopter because they had put me through a CT scanner and I was now bleeding in both sides of the brain. The main bigger aneurysm that I had is right behind my optical nerves, behind my eyes, right in the middle of my head, which is why it bled to both sides. And they told my mom, she can't even make a 30-minute ambulance ride. We need to flight for life her to a hospital in Milwaukee. And so they did, and I went right away into 2 surgeries. One was to insert the tube, which they do to relieve the fluid that had now built up in my head, and so that I wouldn't have brain swelling, which I eventually did anyway, develop encephalitis. And then the second one was they go through your growing up into your head, and they actually inserted coils, metal coils, into both aneurysms. And what that does is it displaces the blood so that the aneurysms can no longer grow. Then I had a 72-hour window where they told my mom she might not make it. She might just go. And I remember waking up in the middle of that, and there was a priest in front of me, and he goes, would you like your last rites? And Bill, was so shocked because I had no concept that it had gotten that serious. Like, I had no idea. And I looked at him and I said, has it come to that? And he just shrugged his shoulders like, I don't know, And I was like, well, okay, do what you got to do, And they gave me the last rites. And I really did not know, when I had first woken up the next day after the stroke, my nurse came in and she's yelling at me really loud. It felt like she was yelling at me. Maybe it was my sensitivity to hearing. And she's like, you've had a hemorrhagic stroke and an aneurysm burst in your head. And I looked at her and I was like, you're kidding me. You must have had some drugs. And if you've had some good ones, then you need to share because there's no way I've had a stroke. I couldn't believe it. And then all of a sudden I touch my head. And she's like, don't touch your head, don't touch your head. And there was a tube sticking out of it. They had shaved half of my head. And when you have long brown hair, to have your head half shaved is like, what did you guys do to me? And then just this whole crazy world of recovery happened. I was in ICU for 3 weeks because I developed encephalitis. Then the tube that they put in my head had sepsis. So I got sepsis, then I got staphylococcus, and then I got another bacteria that I can't even pronounce. So I was really sick. And all I remember is my head just felt like it was going to pop off. It was just pounding so hard because of the brain swelling. And the head of infectious diseases comes up, almost running up to my bed. And he's like, are you okay? I'm like, yeah. He goes, well, do you feel this? And do you feel? I'm like, no, I'm fine. And I look at him and I said, you look like you came to see somebody who was dying. And he said, yeah, I did. I was like, I'm fine. He's like, well, technically with your blood work, you're not fine. And we have to put you under, some really intense antibiotics and blah, blah, blah. So anyway, that's the story in a nutshell. It was a complete surprise. Don't take migraines lightly, people, whoever's listening to this. If you have recurring, migraines, there's a reason for them, and just don't let it go. And, but I'm very fortunate. I have no cognitive or physical deficits. I did have major stroke fatigue, for a year. A good solid year afterwards. Did you experience stroke fatigue?
I absolutely did. It's a kind of, when people say, "Oh yeah, I get tired too." It's like, no, No, you don't.
Mm-mm.
It's a very different thing. I used to describe it as, normally for most people, your cell phone battery goes from 100 to 90 to 80 to 70, yada, yada, yada. When you've had a stroke, it starts at 60 at the max. We'll go 50, 40, 10, 5, 0.
You're out.
And you just hit the wall and you're done. There's no pushing through it. You're just done.
Yeah, well, that was the really tough part. Exactly. You hit it on the head, because I'm the type of person before, I'm used to 16 hours a day. Let's go, production. Yeah, Carmen, cut wood, mix cement, put those tiles in, I'm used to pushing. And I always used to say, mind over body, mind over body. Your body will do what your mind tells it to do. Well, for the first time in my life, it was like something smacked me across the head and said, girl, you need to chill out and you need to take life a lot slower. And that was the hardest part. It was like, I told my doctor, I was like, I'm tired of being tired, and it gets depressing. Like, I would be in bed by 5 or 6 o'clock in the afternoon. The sun would still be going out. And I'm like, I'm ready to go to sleep. And it's no joke. Mm-hmm. It's no joke when you say, you can't, you can't, your thoughts get clouded. You can't process things right. It is stroke fatigue is no joke. And I tell people stroke fatigue is something that is very, very real. But until you experience it, again, until you experience a parent dying, you don't know what it is. Thank God, right about the year mark, it started to dwindle for me. And still, if we get a good snowstorm here and I'm shoveling all these inches of snow at the end of that day, I will certainly still feel it. I can't say I'm 100%, but I'm a lot better.
That's awesome. What I found with it is that a lot of the ways it manifests now is that I don't have as much of a buffer if something goes wrong. So when I injure my shoulder doing something in the past, I could deal with the pain, could push through, but now just having to deal with that pain will kick that neurofatigue in. And anytime something goes wrong, I'm much more likely to just need that nap, to need to sleep.
Yeah, it's kind of like for me, it's kind of like my sensitivity bar got raised. And that is physically, emotionally, mentally. For a while there, I had a really hard time with feeling overwhelmed, which turned into anxiety. And I used to pride myself, and I can multitask, and I can do a million things at a time, and I got this. And what actually has helped me is meditating, and I know you've done a lot of research and you're very aware of neuroplasticity, which is probably like the most baby form of neuroscience, where how our brains can change, and our brain is kind of like this big plastic kind of thing that can get rewired. There's parts of our brains that under stress can shrink and contract. There's parts of our brains that can grow further. And actually meditating has helped me to calm myself enough to get past what used to push me a little bit into anxiety. I'm happy to report that I'm kind of past that as well. But I think that was definitely an offshoot of the stroke for me.
And in your environment too, with the things that you're passionate about, the things you're working on, you're also, of course, getting involved into a ton of sensory information, working with power tools, with the noise and the physicality of the devices and vibrations, and trying to move stuff and make stuff fit. There's a ton of just stimulation coming in that environment too.
Yes, absolutely. And, one of the things that was my biggest fear, is laying in that bed is, oh my God, my career, my work, my everything is, will I get this back? Am I able to come back from all of this? That was like the big fear, So like the first thing I wanted to do when I got out of the hospital is, I play 9 instruments and I sing and I dance. Before I was this power tool girl, I've actually been on Broadway. I was a professional dancer, professional singer. I actually have a Bachelor of Fine Arts in Music Theater. So I'm like a performer, you know what I mean? And so the first thing I wanted to do when I got home is I got to see if I can dance, and my mom put some salsa music on, and I was like, come here. And she's like, what? I goes, I want to see if I can dance still. And I could still dance, you know, it was a little heavy in the feet, you know, but I could dance. And then actually, while I was in the hospital, the doctor told my mom, bring her guitar so that she can play in the hospital and start to connect, you know, the different parts of the brain. And I found that everything, you know, all my extremities, the guitar stuff was working. I could play my instruments. Then I attempted to sing for the first time, and my voice was weak. It was like something had kind of clipped my vocal cords, but I have now recovered that as well. Actually, I had the stroke in August, and in the hospital, I had said to someone, you know, that little building in downtown Waukesha, I want that as my shop. I said, if I get out of here, will you help me please get that as my shop? And the person said, yes, absolutely, we'll make it happen. And so now that is actually my workshop. I left the hospital early September. By mid-October, I had the keys in my hand. Wow. But I was still really like this was like at the beginning of like week, you know, and my dear friend who's now passed away, Ednan Ortiz, who's actually with me at the hospital every day, became my like little guardian angel. And he helped me paint the shop. He changed all the locks for me. He helped me move my stuff in. He wouldn't let me lift stuff, but we got it together so that by December, I was actually starting to wood turn again. And I made that month of December, I made 39 pens, 12 butcher blocks, 12 cheese cutting boards, some awards it was a corporate order that actually had come in. And so I was right back to it. And to me, you know, it seems from the outside that power tool world it can be agitating and it can be loud, but, you know, I protect my ears with earphones. B, I always have music going on, but C, it is very meditative because what is meditation? Meditation is a sole focus on one thing, just where there's no other thought that comes through, and it's just a clear one singular thought, right? You're still aware, you're still very conscious. You can meditate in motion. And so wood turning, which is really my biggest passion in the wood world of all the tools, the wood lathe is my favorite. And you guys can check out my work at my website, carmendelapaz.com. And I'm on Instagram and Twitter and Facebook. You can see my work to see what I'm talking about. But basically, it's a piece of wood that's pinched between two centers, and it's rotating at up to 2,000 rotations per minute. And you have a 12-inch chisel in your hand. And so you have got to have laser focus for many reasons, for safety, to actually execute the work well. And I feel like that is another form of meditation. So it's actually, in a weird way, I know it sounds counterintuitive, but it's a very calming thing for me. You know, all of my creativity and my working is very calming to me. And I am very methodical. I don't rush through anything, even more so now since I've had the stroke. It's like, you know, safety first, safety second, safety third. Okay, now I'm ready kind of thing, you know. Mm-hmm. But it's very, very calming. And I tell people that all the time, you know, on a lot of my shows, I'm like, work with your hands. It's a way of loving yourself. It's a way of expressing yourself, and it's a way of finding a certain calm that we don't all necessarily find in the world. We're running and we're going and we're going and we're running, and we don't take the time to take two steps back and just breathe in and breathe out, and everything's fine. And, you know, everybody's living either in their pain of the past or their anxiety of the future. Well, what people don't realize is that the bridge to both of those things is right now. And I'm very conscious of the fact that the past is the past. I had the stroke, that relationship didn't work out, things were completely unexpected. The future, hey, look at COVID. It totally knocked me out, Bill. Like, you know, talk about double self-isolation. You know, for a year before COVID, I was isolating myself because of the stroke. Now then COVID came in, and it's like, boom, kid, you still need to sit out and you still need to chill out. And so to take two steps back is like something that's very rare for us in this society, and especially for Carmen De La Paz, who is always been known as a go-getter, and she does a million things at the same time, and go, 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 and travel and get on the plane and go to South Africa and go to Australia and go to Puerto Rico and go do the show in Northern California and go shoot that show in New York and go to Las Vegas for the National Hardware Show. That was my life. And to take 2 steps back and just chill out and realize that even though the past gave me some challenges, and even though I do not have any certainty of the future, the bridge to both of those are right now. And what do I choose to do with right now? And what I'm choosing to do with right now is I'm in recovery mode, and I'm allowing myself to be in recovery mode, which means I'm giving myself permission to be a little bit slower, to take a little bit more time, and C, I'm really taking my time to decide what next. Well, here we are, Bill. You know how destiny kind of knocks you out, right? Kind of takes a left turn, Here I thought my TV career was completely done, and now I've had 2 networks call me, and I'm in talks for a few different shows. We're all on hold still for COVID, but I'm certainly hoping that I'll be back on camera soon enough in one of these shows. And I'm allowing and I'm letting destiny kind of continue to take me onto the bridge to the future. But I know that if I don't do power tools now, and I'm not creating now, and I'm not continuing to kind of flex my muscles as a creative, when it comes time to be in front of the camera to do that stuff, I won't be ready. Or I won't feel confident, or I'm going to feel insecure. And so every day I go to my little workshop, and every day I'm making and I'm creating, and most of the stuff I end up giving away. and I'm just trying to find me again. And meditating has really helped a lot. But I think it's that neuroplasticity. And I'm not saying like meditating like guru, spirit, I am very spiritual, obviously, but it's about being in the moment right now that clears the mind enough so that the mind can grow and the brain can really get that neuroplasticity growing, where we can work and regrow our frontal cortex, where we can grow our amygdala. These are all parts of the brain that have shown neuroplasticity, or the ability to grow bigger through meditation and singular thought.
There is a lot to unpack in there.
There's a lot. And I don't claim to, I'm actually a vociferous student and a vociferous reader. I do not claim to be an expert. I'm merely sharing this information to hopefully invite people to open the door so that they can explore the path down all of this, but it's fascinating. And I think that mostly what I'm saying is don't limit yourself. If this happened to you, if a stroke happened to you, so much of it, and this, Bill, is your mental attitude and your mental decisions as to, I'm going to be better. It might take you longer than somebody else. It might be harder than you ever expected in your life, because that's certainly been my case. This comeback has been harder than anything I've ever faced in my life, but the only person that can tell you no is you. And the only person that can put limits on you is you. And especially with neuroplasticity, you don't even know how much your ability to regrow parts of your connections and your cognitive, sparks in your brain. Don't give up. There's no reason to give up other than what you have self-imposed.
I think one of the core elements, of course, the neuroplasticity is the whole idea of nerves that fire together, wire together. The more that we focus on one particular thing, the more resources the brain is going to dedicate to that thing, whether it's a skill, whether it's a thought process, whether it's an attitude, whatever it is, the brain is going to go to whatever it is you focus on. Kind of like driving on dirt roads. Eventually there are ruts in the road that just go to wherever you go most frequently. And you want to make sure those ruts go to the place you want to go.
Exactly. Yeah, and we do have that power, and people don't give themselves that permission or that power. So I'm here to tell you, give yourself permission and know that you can make inroads, literally playing the pun on what you just expressed, to a better, stronger recovery.
I also think one of the things that's really interesting is that even over the last 30, 40 years of my Catholic education is that the church is still struggling with rebranding last rites to anointing of the sick.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
Of course, it also sounds like you've come from that experience of whenever something goes wrong, pop a couple of Advil, take some water, and sleep it off and call it good. Had you historically been willing to go to the doctor or take advantage of the medical system before your stroke?
Not much. I'll be really honest with you. Like, I did the bare minimum, obviously, because I didn't go for these migraines. I didn't know what the heck it was, I had no idea. The thing is also, sadly, unless you've fallen over, can't get yourself up, they'll put you through a scanner to find out if you have an aneurysm. If you go into a doctor and say you have a migraine, you have to go to so many appointments and prove in so many ways that these migraines have gone away before they put you through a CT scanner to say you might have an aneurysm. Like, it's like they almost avoid looking for them, when it might be the first obvious choice, because a lot more people have aneurysms than are even aware of it. So no, I'll be really honest. I was very guilty of, I'm in great shape. I work out, I run, I bike. I was vegetarian for a long time. I'm good. I was a size 4, size 6. I'm good. I don't need to. I'm good as long as I feel good. Why do I need to keep going to the doctor? I was not. No. That's honest.
And then, of course, there are the added challenges of a lot of times we're hearing more and more reports and research showing that women aren't taken as seriously when they go to the doctor complaining of pains or headaches and any of those types of conditions. And in addition to that challenge, do you feel that as a woman of color that has impacted your care?
No, I mean, I'm so fortunate that I honestly can say I've felt biased very little in my life and in my career. I think that to a certain extent, I sign up to that. It's, if you present yourself intelligently and with, sort of boundaries and strength, there's even less people that are going to try to push that stuff around. You know what I mean? I think that when people kind of can sense a weakness or a weakness or an insecurity, that they might want to push a little bit further within those realms of, bias, racism, whatever. So I think that I've experienced it. I think we all have. You can't walk around and say you haven't. From being a woman to being Latina, there's no way you can't say you haven't. But I do know that it's far less than so many other people have in life, It's a shame. It's a shame that it doesn't matter what because it doesn't even have to be about color. It could be, you could be autistic and white and still feel a bias and be not treated right. You know what I mean? So I just think the one thing that has really grown for me since the stroke is compassion. I have a much deeper compassion for people and struggles that we might not even be aware of, And so I find myself able to give people the benefit of the doubt because I might not recognize whatever issue they're going through or whatever pain they've been through or whatever horrible childhood they may have been through, or maybe they suffer from some mental illness that is very high functioning and you don't even see it or know it. And so I'm much more gentle with people. I'm much more empathetic and compassionate in the sense that, if you pushed me too far, the hot-headed Latina would certainly come out, But I think that, now it's going to take a lot to find that hot-headed Latina, and I'd prefer to walk away and take the high road to get to the end of the road than to get entangled with a vibration or energy that lacks understanding and lacks compassion. Because when somebody comes at you negatively, or somebody comes at you something that is unjust, I've learned that it's their lack of compassion, not your lack of compassion. And you either have a choice to tangle with it, or you have a choice to take the high road, to make it to the end of the road. And that's really something that has come through for me with the stroke, because I've never known a health challenge. Well, that's not true. I had scoliosis when I was a kid, and I wore a back brace for 3 years. But to me, it was like that made me tougher. That made me more resilient. That made me, but to where you need somebody to help you to go to the bathroom, where you need help taking a shower, where you need help putting your shoes on, that is a whole nother level of understanding, of compassion, of, I know from where you walk from, that until you walk in those shoes, you don't know what it is, even somebody like who might be listening to us talk about all this right now, until you've really experienced some of these things, you're just not going to know. You're just not going to have it, And I think that a lot of the reason why this was put in my life and in my plate, and of recovery enough so that I can get back to being who I was and being a voice, is to add that whole compassion chip to my process. I've always been very nurturing, very caring. I think people can sense that when they watch me on television. I'm always the affectionate one. I'm always the one showing love to the family of whatever makeover we're doing. But it just goes, I cannot wait to get back on camera, because I just feel like it goes, my heart, my compassion, and the alignment between my heart and my mind have gone to a whole nother level.
Awesome. And I feel that energy coming through in your voice, which is
thank
awesome.
You.
Awesome.
Thank you. That's really nice. And thank you for the confirmation, because that's what we all want, right?
Absolutely.
And Bill, I feel like in a weird way, like I feel like my creative work as far as making has gotten better. It's more meticulous. It's more creative. It's more, beauty is subjective, right? But to me, just what I'm doing in profiles and finishes and colors and depth and textures, to me, it's more beautiful. But I feel like it's like, because I'm more in tune in a deeper place. It's hard to explain.
Mm-hmm.
But it's a really cool thing, and I'm totally embracing it. And I'm finally, Bill, this is the first time I'm going to say this on your show, I'm finally at a place where I'm going to get emotional. Darn it, I didn't want to do that. Where I can really say I'm grateful that this has happened to me. It's good.
It's so counterintuitive, but so many of the survivors I talk to describe themselves as lucky. Either lucky because of the nature of their particular recovery, and we talk about disabilities. I consider myself lucky that I only lost use of my limbs and not my voice for the things I'm passionate about. Mm-hmm. Others describe themselves as lucky because it really made a change in their life, made them refocus on their priorities, took them off a path that was ultimately not as healthy for them as it could have been.
Absolutely. Early on in my recovery, I think it was like my first visit to the doctor after I got out of the hospital, and he opens the door and he goes, "Well, look at you, you're a miracle." And he put his hand on my shoulder, and he goes, "Carmen, seriously, you've made an incredible recovery. When I was in med school, the statistics were, when this happens to somebody, 30% immediately, instantly die. 30% die right there. Then another 30% end up in a vegetative coma state, never to wake up again. Then another 30% end up with major deficits, loss of limbs, inability to speak, major cognitive deficits. And he said, you're still struggling with certain things, but I promise you in like a year or two, you're going to be fine. And you're going to be a lot better than what you ever anticipated. And you have gone way beyond our expectations from the trajectory of what you went medically, and so, yes, Bill, yes, I am very, 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 very lucky, very fortunate. And I feel like there's got to be a purpose for this, right? Because he could have taken us out just like that. Mm-hmm. He could have, right? And look, you found your purpose. Isn't it amazing that you're reaching so many people, that you're giving a voice to something, that you're putting light on something that normally is not seen, that even though you are having difficulties with your limbs, that you found your voice. And as an artist, that's the most beautiful thing that everybody wants to do. They want to find their voice as an artist, right? And so we are lucky and we are fortunate. And it's the perspective from which you choose to embrace that. And so, yeah, I had a lot of left turns. I did not expect to be in Waukesha, Wisconsin 2 years later. You know what I mean? But here I am. And, I'm happy. I've got my own little house now. I've got my studio. I'm now a city commissioner. You can call me commish. I've been appointed by the mayor to a commission, and I'm having a blast contributing to my community and making my little city just that much better. And there's more to come, and I know that there's more to come, but I also know that this time was given for me to recover on a lot of different levels, physically, cognitively from the stroke. Those are the basics. Those are the things that we know. Those are the givens. But now I'm recognizing that it's actually spiritually, it's energetically, it's my interaction with the oneness of this universe. And I don't want to get too woo-woo with you, but if that's what's helping me get ahead and take every step further and be happy, then that's what I'm going to do. And that's what I'm embracing. And I'm just, letting the universe reveal what's next, because we can't get caught up in, I was a planner, I'm going to do this in a year. I'm going to do this in 2 years. I'm going to do this in 5 years. I'm going to do this in 10 years. And for a long time, the things kept coming through. Well, now I can't plan anything. I didn't plan anything. And I'm going to allow the universe to see what's next. And hopefully it'll be a TV show. I'm thinking about doing a podcast, so I might be coming to you for some advice.
Happy to help.
It's something I've talked about it. And honestly, Bill, I just got to press the go button.
Absolutely.
And it's, So that's where I am, I thank you so much for giving me an opportunity to share this crazy journey and this crazy trail. But, I can honestly say I am grateful. I know I am so fortunate, even though it's been horrible. And I'm on the other side of so many things. I know that.
A couple of years ago, I had another local artist on the show, a gentleman by the name of Seth Ian Shear. And he was a painter before his stroke. And, one of the most remarkable quotes out of that conversation, where he was talking about the morning he woke, or he ended up in the hospital, and he was like, I hope I'm better by Monday, because I got a lot of stuff to do. And that resonated with a lot of us, I think.
Yeah.
But one of the things he remarked on was that after his stroke, it took a while before he could paint again. And when he started painting again, it was in such a completely different style than anything he had done before. He felt like the stuff he had done before his stroke was done by a completely different artist. So much so that for his newer stuff, he actually opted to paint under his middle name of Ian, because it really seemed like a different person. And his work is absolutely incredible. But I think that change, that dramatic change in how he creates art and what that means, I think that was really striking. And it sounds like you're talking about something of a similar experience there. And the other thing I wanted to touch on there was actually in the same month as your stroke, an interview you did came out where you described your workflow and your artistic process as with the single word of catharsis. And does that still resonate for you, or how has your art and creativity changed since your stroke?
I definitely feel it has changed. I feel like it's weird because you'd think that after a stroke, you would have less motor skills and less detail and less focus. And I feel like it's more laser focused. I have more motor dexterity. It's like I feel like a part of my brain was rewired to like on a higher level. You know what I mean? And as far as the word catharsis, that's actually one of my favorite words in the world, because catharsis in a plot, when you're writing a story, there's a catharsis, which means that you're building up to something and then it explodes and then there's the down trickle of it. So like that's catharsis, and it's like all of my work was always like, I'm building up to something and it explodes. And I don't think I can apply that to my work anymore. I don't think I can apply like build up, tension, explode. And because it's much more, that's interesting, Bill. Thank you for bringing that up. It's much more soothing. It's much more calming. I think that my interpretation or alliteration of catharsis meant that there was a sense of urgency and a certain pressure behind it, like, work. And I've taken such a different stance on that. I feel like it's more like, create, do your thing. And I'm just totally taking my time in creating. And I think that maybe that's why I feel more focused and more detail oriented and more like higher dexterity to a certain extent. It's like, I can't, this is the most basic and most simple way I can explain it. Like cutting with a circular saw, especially for a woman, it can be a little heavy. And sometimes like the knobs, if it's not the right circular saw, to actually hit the safety button and press the switch, our hands can be kind of small. And then sometimes I have to hold the safety guard back to get it to cut through a piece of wood. And so sometimes, when you do that, your cut, and it's freehand, your cut kind of jiggles and it goes kind of crazy. Well, now my cuts are very precise, very straight. It's not that it's strength. It's like there is some type of a focus that kind of anchors it better. And that's like the best way that I can explain it. It's like my cuts are more anchored and my work is more anchored. Do I feel like my work is better? I don't know yet, because I'm still doing, I've mostly been wood. I've mostly been metal. I've mostly been glass. And for some reason recently, I'm being pulled to paint portraitures, to paint images. And so now I'm just starting to go down that realm. And I'm really excited about it, because everything that I've done, wood, glass, cement, has been like I've heard the calling, and I've done a lot of decorative painting and decorative finishes, but never like more portraiture or landscapey or actually images. But it's calling me. And so I'm excited, because I think that there's a purpose and a reason for that. And to be continued, because we don't know yet, darling. This is your cliffhanger. So that you can have me come back in a year and we can talk again, Bill.
Absolutely. I am looking forward to that, because I feel like we could go another 6 hours or so.
We probably could.
But one of the things that's really interesting in there is that the way you described the catharsis before your stroke is this whole idea of building and building and building, and this pressure building and building and building, and then it explodes and unleashes this. And that's kind of exactly what happened with your aneurysm and it rupturing. You're
so right. Oh my God. Thank you so much. Yeah. I tell people all the time, I refer to my stroke as like, when my head blew up. My head exploded, because it literally did. So you're so right. Yeah, I never thought of it that way. For sure, my head had a catharsis.
and it did ultimately resulted some relief and a new way of moving forward with life.
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously something needed an adjustment, right?
Yeah.
And when I was in the hospital the first few days, when they were thinking I was pretty serious, I kept telling my doctors, I'm like, I'm going to be your outlier. I'm going to show you. I'm going to be your best recovery. You're going to see, but it was a mindset from the beginning. It was a choice. It was like, okay, this happened to me. What next? We can all wallow in, oh my God, this happened to me. And oh my God, I've lost my career. And oh my God, and what am I going to do? And la la la. And to me, it's like, I'm not going to lie to you and tell you that I didn't have some days like that. Yes, absolutely. But therein comes the growth when you can then actually turn around and say, okay, that happened to me. Now what next? What are you choosing to do with it? And I've always been a fighter. I've always been a get up and go get 'em. And it was definitely much more cathartic in the past. And now it's much more methodical and much more paced and much more like, I think it's a combination of stroke and age and maturity, emotional maturity in the sense of, being really good with who you are and what you contribute to the world allows you to kind of go, okay, we don't have to rush through this, okay, it's going to get done. Okay, we're going to do it. And in some ways, it's interesting. Some of my things, when you approach things from that kind of like chill, okay, it's going to get done, you actually end up doing the things faster. Because you don't make mistakes and you don't like push things and you're more efficient. It's like kind of like a little bit more premeditated. And so I'm finally to a point where I'm excited about the future. I'm excited that this coronavirus thing is going to kind of hopefully get into a place where the entertainment industry and so many creative outlets can get back to doing what we do. There's been so much focus on so many other industries, but I don't think people have realized how many people have been set back in the entertainment industry, in the creative industry, how we've, so many people, everything's had to go, streaming, now that on the Tonight shows of the world and all these night talk shows and all these news shows, they've got everybody live streaming from their own homes on camera. There's actually TV personalities who have, started to tape their own shows at their house. Their husband's their camera person. And it's only her, her and her husband, and they're doing the full show and they're sending it to the network, and that's what's going on television, So there's few that have been able to break through that and make it happen, but there's so many others that aren't able to work, and how do, my genre's television is home makeovers. Well, I can't live stream a living room, I can't put the baseboards in from here.
And there's only so many times you can redo your own home.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So I'm just hoping that we can get back to what we do which is, changing people's lives by reinventing their spaces and making people happy, because at the end of the day, I don't do brain surgery, that's what I do. And I just hope that we can get back to it really soon,
And that brings us to our hack of the week. But first, let's talk about our sponsor, Modus Nova. If you're finding it hard to recover at home after stroke, Modus Nova may be able to help. You can take a free online assessment over at strokecast.com/Modus Nova to find out. Modus Nova actually makes devices to help folks with stroke or other brain injuries regain the use of their affected limbs. In the weeks immediately following a stroke, we tend to make our quickest progress as sort of bruised areas of the brain start to come back online. But after that, it's tougher to see the progress we make. Now, one thing I really like about the Modus Hand robotic exoskeleton is that in addition to helping you get the thousands of reps that you need to recover, it also tracks your progress. You can see the charts and graphs that show your improvement over time, and it also tells you more about your current situation. I just started using it myself on my left hand, and it turns out I have less wrist extension than I thought I had. The data actually tells the story and gives me a little bit more information about what I need to do in my own recovery. Interested in learning more? Go ahead and visit strokecast.com/Modus Nova to do that. You can get 10% off your first month with the code STROKECAST when you sign up. Go ahead and visit strokecast.com/Modus Nova. And now back to Carmen and the hack of the week.
That the biggest thing that has affected me is my strength, right? That I'm not as strong as I used to be, where, lifting a 90-pound bag of cement ain't so easy anymore. Holding a couple of pieces of wood down with one hand to be able to get the nail gun in or the drill pre-drilled or whatever. It's a little bit more challenging for me because I'm still building up my strength, and I've found in the DIY world that clamps, they've always been my friend, but clamps have become my best friend in the whole wide world. And there are ways that I use them now that I never used them before traditionally in carpentry, you know what I mean? So I think that using an extra pair of hands in considering that clamp being your extra pair of hands can also work at home. You know what I mean? Like if you're trying to cut something or move something, use a clamp to hold that cutting board down if the cutting board's moving. You know what I mean? I mean, just having a little quick release clamp might make your life a lot easier for a lot of things at home. Be creative with it.
So if folks want to know more about you and what you're up to, where should they go?
Yeah, you guys can go to my website, which is carmendelapaz.com. You can read more about me there. You can see my work. I'm really the most up to date with Pinterest and Instagram, and I also have a public page on Facebook. So I'm on all of those, but most of my main ones are Instagram and Pinterest, and then Facebook. But you can feel free to follow me there. All of them have videos. All of them have images of my work. I'm soon going to start taking orders on things. So if you guys want pens, if you want a honey dipper, if you want a coffee grinder, any one of those things, you can also go through my website because I'm going to look to be making to actually sell, because so many people have been asking me, where can I buy it? Can I get that? Can I get that? And so instead of just me saying to one person, yeah, I'm just going to put it out there and take the orders as they go. And that's kind of my next goal. And I'm hoping that this has certainly been an inspiration. I'm hoping to get to my podcast, and it's called DIY Life, because life is what you make it. And so you can go ahead and make it DIY. And so I'm an open book, ladies and gentlemen. I hope that that I can inspire people to believe that things will get better, and whatever situation you find yourself in right now, you also have the capacity to change it right now by simply changing your perspective.
Awesome. And all of those links will be available over at strokecast.com/Carmen. So you can just go there and you can click on all of these links or find Carmen directly.
Yes, please.
Carmen, this has been an absolute delight. We're definitely going to have to do this again. And I can't wait to one of these days when you've got a project in Seattle, or I've got cause to visit Waukesha, Wisconsin again, and post-COVID, and to go get coffee or something. This has been so much fun.
Love that, really. I actually have never been to Seattle. I've welded the your big icon in the sky there.
The Space Needle.
Yes, I have. I've welded a miniature. Well, miniature was an 8-foot version of the Space Needle. So I've studied every angle of it intimately, and I would love to go and see it in person. I hear it's a beautiful city. And but mostly I'd love to meet you and give you a big old hug, because I can feel you, and I thank you so much for the work you're doing.
Carmen does have a store on her website now, and that is open for business, where you can see and purchase some of the beautiful pieces she's made. And of course, if you're near Waukesha, Wisconsin, be sure to check out the classes that Carmen offers on her website as well. You can actually take classes at Carmen's studio, up close and personal. Some really cool stuff that she's covering there. Now, one of the other things I want to talk about is, of course, Carmen's stroke was caused by an aneurysm. And an aneurysm is something that's, well, it's really a misunderstood medical condition. The general public seems to think that an aneurysm is just when the brain blood vessels just burst right then and cause a hemorrhagic stroke. In reality, I mean, that's close, but what an aneurysm actually is it's a weak spot in the wall of a blood vessel, or it's a bubble, or the side of the blood vessel starts bulging out as you start to have this weak spot where blood can start to pool. It happens in the sides of blood vessels. It also happens in places in like areas where blood vessels actually split into two smaller blood vessels, and that sort of Y junction, that junction right there, can be a weak spot where an aneurysm can form. Now you see, as long as that aneurysm itself, however, doesn't break or leak or bleed or get too big, you can actually go your whole life with an aneurysm and never even know it. I mean, millions of people are walking around with aneurysms in their brains right now, and they're never going to know, and it's never going to cause them a problem. Carmen's aneurysms, however, manifested for 10 years as migraines. See, that bulge in the wall of a vessel can cause problems. There's not a whole lot of room in the brain for stuff to be growing into it. Things are pretty packed tight inside our skull. Unfortunately, many folks just don't get the scan that can show the aneurysms that exist, and you can't treat them if you don't know they exist. If you do learn that it exists, there are some amazing surgical procedures that they can do to reinforce that blood vessel or prevent that aneurysm from bursting. But sometimes we don't find out, and sometimes those aneurysms are weak enough that they break. And when that aneurysm ruptures, it sends blood coursing directly into the brain, and the results are, catastrophic. Many of the hemorrhagic strokes that we hear about are caused by ruptured aneurysms, and folks who survive are, really quite lucky. So I just wanted to provide a little bit more context for just what we're talking about when we talk about aneurysms. You can have aneurysms that don't cause problems. You can find out about ones that are there before a stroke and get surgery to correct them if necessary. And if you don't know about them and they don't get fixed and they're weak enough, they can cause some serious problems. One of the other things that Carmen talked about was working with a lathe and turning wood. I mean, have you ever seen this process in action? It's really quite beautiful. Basically, what this equipment is a piece of wood is mounted and spins super fast. A woodworker then will hold a chisel against the spinning wood to shave it. And how long they press, how deeply they shave that piece of wood, and which chisel they choose all allow different wooden shapes to emerge from a simple block of timber. It's really quite beautiful to watch, and if you get the chance, definitely check it out. I also really like Carmen's approach to meditation. You see, the thing about the way she approaches meditation is that what it really is, it's about a singular focus that she finds when working with a tool and timber to produce a thing. That deep focus is something you can achieve in other areas too. There are times when I'm sort of working in a spreadsheet and can experience a similar state. Other things will leave my mind and I can just deeply focus on a single thing and making it happen. It doesn't happen all the time, but mainly when I'm working at just beyond my skill level, I can get into that sort of deep, simple focus on a task. The thing is, there are lots of different approaches to meditation and focusing your mind. And maybe that could be in a traditional setting, or maybe it's with a guide like Samir talked about a couple of weeks ago at strokecast.com/onefineday. Maybe it's in yoga, like we heard about from Leslie a couple of months back. Or maybe it's working with power tools and making a thing. Maybe it's in building a spreadsheet or writing code or knitting a blanket or doing an exercise program or sweeping a floor or weeding a garden or whatever. Finding something you can do that pushes all other thoughts out of your mind can help quiet your mind. I'd love to hear what other activities you find meditative. So let us know over in the comments at strokecast.com/Carmen or on the various social medias. One final note before I let you go, and that's that May is National Stroke Month. And if you're so inclined, this is a great time to help raise awareness of stroke in your community. Talk about your story. Or if you don't want to do that, or you're not comfortable with that, find opportunities to share the Be Fast warning signs of a stroke with other folks. Be Fast, of course, balance, eyes, face, arms, speech, time to call an ambulance. And if you start your own stroke-related awareness campaign, I'd love to hear about it. So be sure to check the show notes in your podcast app or visit strokecast.com/Carmen to learn more and to find links to Carmen's website. This summer, I'll also be launching the free email-based Strokecast newsletter. You can sign up for that at strokecast.com/newsletter. Be sure to follow or subscribe to the Strokecast in your favorite podcast application so you never miss an episode. And of course, as always, don't get best. Get better. Thanks a lot. I'm Bill Monroe, and I'll talk to you soon.
The Strokecast, Bill Monroe, and Bill's guests provide general information and entertainment, not medical advice. Please do not make any changes to your treatment plan or the execution of your treatment plan without first consulting your personal doctor or medical team. The Strokecast is a proud production of the Currently Speaking Podcast Network.